right, I went a little bit longer than usual. Sorry about that. But I wanted to finish the chapter, just because. Okay, well, I guess I'll leave this out in case there are questions on the chapter. All right, so this is what we call the Afterburn. So if you have comments or questions on today's teaching, you're welcome to come up to the mic. All right, and we'll begin with another Shamish. Shamish Steve will be up here and lead us off with the first comment or question.
All right, I have a comment. Because in the beginning it has to walk worthily, and I thought worthily seemed to be important because we know what walking is. So the definition is having or showing the qualities or abilities that merit recognition. Isn't that wild? So my question is are you truly walking worthily, or are we going just through the motions to look like we're doing it? Because we got to have an intenseness to our action, attitude, and thoughts. We just can't be doing it.
Amen. Look, the people out there that are against works don't want that verse. Because if you have to be worthy, that means you have to do something. See, they want you to believe that Yeshua is worthy, which he is, and that's all you need. They want you to believe that his worthiness is all you need. But Paul's telling you to walk in a worthy manner, worthy of the calling that merits the favor, that merits appreciation. The Father looks down and says, I am pleased with what you're doing. But that takes away the whole that we don't do works, we only do faith. But James tells you that's not possible. One leads to the other. Your works are a three-dimensional expression of your faith. What you believe, you do. Your choices. So also what you believe, you don't do. In other words, if you believe you shouldn't do it. Your choices are based on your beliefs. What you do and what you don't do is based on your beliefs. So don't tell me that it's not about works. Your works show your beliefs. And that's what James says. I will show you my works by my belief. my beliefs by my works. All right, Chris.
Because Shamish Steve mentioned worthiness, I looked up the word, and it's axios, or it's related to the word axis. And so it's like a balance scale, and you have to measure up to the weight or something. That's the idea behind the Greek, at least.
Okay, cool.
I had a comment and a question. The comment was Jeremiah 26, verse 12. And it says, and Yirmiyahu spoke to all the heads of all the people, saying, Yahweh sent me to prophesy. It goes on. But I wanted to note that it says sent and also prophesy. So I was thinking that Jeremiah was kind of course, a prophet, but at the same time, he was a sent one, because the word behind there, the sent, is a shaliach. So I wanted to make sure that.
Well, look, prophets were specifically, especially in the Tanakh, they were sent to a king, they were sent to the nation. So they were both prophets and sent ones. They were shaliachs, so absolutely both, okay? There's no doubt about it. But also notice that he was sent to prophesy against the house of Israel, okay? So he says, Yahweh sent me to prophesy against this house. Actually, it's Judah. So they weren't going to like him very much. He was sent to prophesy against. Tell them, you guys need to knock it off. And since you're not knocking it off, guess what? Babylon's coming. Because you're not listening. All right, Chris?
Yeah. And I have a question. The question's about 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 28, because it starts off pretty much like Ephesians 4. It talks about, even in verse 27, in your body, Messiah, and it's about the same kinds of things, I think. And it says, and Elohim has appointed these in the assembly, firstly, emissaries, secondly, prophets, thirdly, teachers, and then it is different. This is after that, miracles, and then gift of healings, helps, administrations, and kinds of tongues. So I wanted to know, why that was included, as obviously it's not like an 8-fold ministry, but why does that matter? Why is it in the list?
It's basically saying, look, there are those, and I guess this is kind of the point that Paul is trying to make, is actually in verse 30, or verse 29. It says, are all any one of those things. In other words, these are things that you may need somebody with a gift of helps. You may need somebody with a gift of healings or ministrations or whatever. And so that doesn't mean everybody's doing any of these things. And that's what he says in verse 29. He says, are all emissaries, are all prophets, are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have all the gifts, etc.? And so he said, this is why the whole charismatic Pentecostal thing is, I don't know what it's based on. Because they're basing it on that everybody needs to do these things because it's proof of your having the Spirit and blah, blah, blah. When clearly Paul himself, who's the one who really talks only about tongues at all, says not everybody does any of these things. He says these things have been appointed. By the way, the gift of tongues, you might have that person who has a gift of languages and have that person that speaks 5 languages, and that's helpful. I know some people that are very gifted and speak many languages, which a lot of us struggle just with one. And yet you know people that speak 6. I know somebody who speaks 6. And easily, fluently, okay? But like fluently meaning like, just like easy, they just speak whatever that language is. That's a gift. Just like you can have a gift of someone, doing any kind of skill that you might think of, whether it's, playing a musical instrument or doing art or doing something in business, or administrating and leading a company or serving in some sort of capacity or fixing your plumbing. I mean, you have people that are gifted at these things and other people that are just doing them. And so he lists these things here. I don't know why they're listed here that way, but he's not trying to tell us the same thing that he told us in Galatians, which is these 5 have a purpose, and they're there to build up the set-apart ones and grow them up into the fullness of Yeshua. So those 5 roles have a purpose. These other things are just roles inside the body. Not to minimize them. I mean, if you need those that are good at helps and ministrations and all those other things, yes, they're needed when they're needed. Okay? When somebody gets hurt in the congregation, we have a medical team. If we didn't have a medical team, we would need one. In other words, we would feel like, wow, we need one of those. And we have one, and that's great. But guess what? Not all of you are on the medical team. Not all of you come up here and sing with the praise team or play an instrument. We all have different things that we do. And so that's what it's trying to talk about here. So thank you for that, Chris. Okay, Janet?
Thank you, Rabbi. Verse 11, it caught my attention when you were reading it, when it says, for the perfecting of the set-apart ones to the work of service, to a building up of the body of the Messiah.
That's verse 12 in my Bible.
Sorry. Yeah, verse 12. So when it says the body of the Messiah, I was thinking, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I want you to tell me. So we are all the body of the Messiah. So if we're doing any of the things that we're not supposed to do, like the futile words and slandering and all that we're actually hurting him, should we be looking at each other as Yeshua-like, even though because that was the original, right? We read about it. That was the original, or when he originally created us, like, according to his image, and we're supposed to be like him. That's the end of it, right, of this life. So should we look at each other like it, to be more tenderhearted and meek and humble, all the things that you taught about?
Yes, absolutely. Look, these roles and the idea for the perfecting and the work of service, the building up, when he says the body, he's trying to give us, it's his choice, right, what metaphors he likes to use. I mean, we all have our sort of go-to imagery that we want to go to, and Paul likes this body thing. And he likes it because then he has Yeshua as the head, and the head does the thinking and the choices and the decisions, and it drives the direction that you're going to go. And so Yeshua is the head, which also means that as the body, the hand doesn't just do whatever it wants. It does what the head wants it to do, right? And the legs don't just do whatever they want. And the tongue doesn't just do whatever it wants. And so he's trying to give us this image that as a collective, like parts of the body, fingers, hands, toes, legs, arms, etc., all function as one. That's how we're supposed to be. So he's just using it as a great picture for that. And so the points you're making, yes, if we're all part of the body, you don't see the fingers and getting and fighting with each other next to each other. Okay? The thumb and pinky aren't having a feud. Okay? All right? They're not going off and not being on speaking terms. I'm not going to grab that thing because I'm going to come too close to the pinky. So try and grab things with the other fingers. It sounds funny, but we do this as people that are part of the body, right? The quote-unquote body. Okay, did that help?
Yes, very much.
Good.
I just have a couple of questions about definitions. So verse 32, tenderhearted. When I think about tenderhearted, I think about being kind, but he already used that word before. And then on I think it's verse 2 when he says, with humility, meekness, and you said meekness is quiet strength. Can you give us an example of what that looks like? Thank you.
Okay, so tenderhearted, I think maybe the word that would be good to give you would be more empathetic. Okay? Tenderhearted person is someone who can feel your pain, can kind of see where you're coming from, can look at you and say, okay, I know, I may not have liked what you just threw at me, but I can kind of sense where you've been through something and you're going through something. That's the tenderhearted part. So it's going to give me a chance to look at you and understand there may be something causing you to do what you're doing, as opposed to just, I don't like what you're doing. Because if the person's doing it, what's the driver underneath that? Okay, and a tenderhearted person can look for that. That's where empathy and sympathy come in, okay? And then the meekness, okay? Meekness is where a family member says to you something like, I want you to come to my wedding on Shabbat. And you say, with quiet strength, I'm sorry, I really would love to come, but I can't do it, it's Shabbat. And they start getting in your face, and you maintain that strength, but quietly. I realize you're upset. I know you're not happy with this choice, but I cannot do this. It's nothing about you. I'd love to be there. Do it on another day. I'll be there in a heartbeat. I cannot do this on Shabbat. And so that's meekness, as opposed to, it's Shabbat, what's wrong with you? And because we can get loud and angry, especially if they start attacking us, saying, oh, you're just in that cult and this and that. Look, I know you're feeling upset right now and you want to attack me, but I understand that's where the tenderhearted comes in, but I can't do this. I will not break the commandments. And you say that with quiet strength, all right? Some of you have watched me do this with some people. They'll come up to me, they'll say certain things, you'll see me go, no. And I'm not yelling at them, I'm just like, no, we're not doing that. Blah, 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 no, okay? And so that's, again, there's a strength behind it, but it's not aggressive. I think that's where more the meekness comes in, okay? It's a non-aggressive strength, okay? Hey, I understand what you want. I understand you're not happy. See how non-aggressive that is? But I can't do it. So the answer's still no, okay? And that's where the meekness is. Okay, Isaiah.
I love what you said about stressors making people grow. And, been through a lot of stressors that are causing growth for me, and I'm thankful for them. I'm really trying to turn that around rather than turn inwardly, turn back to the Father and say thank you, and grow from that. So, but about like the Messiah and looking at each other through the eyes of Messiah, and that, because in verse 19, you say, who having become callous have given themselves up to indecency to work all uncleanness with greediness, but you have not so learned Messiah. If indeed, so if indeed you have heard him and were taught by him as truth is in Messiah, or Yeshua, that you put off with regard your former behavior, the old man. And so you went through this and like the conduct in the body here, and how that the fingers rubbing and the pressure on each other really kind of purges and brings out these things, because I haven't learned Messiah to become callous or give myself up to indecency or work uncleanness with greediness. So, but that's the challenge, and I'm starting to see and understand why the Father would allow these things to remain all around me, to grow me in the ways that I have learned Him.
Right.
You know?
Right. So that you can start getting rid of the things that you did not, that don't represent what you would have learned from Him. By the way, I didn't mention this, but you brought up the word greediness in there. I want you to kind of clarify that. I want to clarify that for you. I mean, I didn't want you to clarify it, but I want to clarify that for you, which is, it's the idea of for gain. Okay, so I don't want you to think greediness, because I hear greedy, I'm thinking money. Okay, so what he's saying is, look, they gave themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with personal, some sort of gain, self-gratification. It's for gain. I'm doing it because it's for me. Okay, that's why they're doing the indecent things. That's why they're doing the unclean things, because it's about me. So that's where the greediness comes in. It's more about, I'm doing it for personal gain. I benefit, at least in my own opinion, right? I benefit from this. Does that make sense? Does that kind of really, that's more scary, isn't it? I saw a few who go like, oh, okay, all right. So, because greediness, you could just write that off if you have no interest in lots of money and wealth and things, because you think greediness is about money. He's talking about indecency and uncleanness. You're doing it with greediness. So you're not doing it about money. You're doing these things that are indecent and unclean because you feel it benefits you. It brings you pleasure. It brings you satisfaction. It brings you something that you shouldn't do, but you're going to feel benefited from it, emotionally at least. Like when you want to go take vengeance on somebody because you took a personal offense to something, that's a greedy thought. Because you're going to benefit, you're going to feel good, like, I got them back, and I got my revenge, and I got my pound of flesh. He says, vengeance is mine, not yours. Okay. But see, you're wanting it, that's your greediness. Or you wanting to see somebody get the payback. Oh, they'll get the payback. You don't need to be there to see it. Oh, but I want to see it. That's greediness. Do you see how that works now? Okay? So whatever these things are that you should not have, that are not how you should have learned Messiah, because you want it, because you're going to benefit in some way, you make you feel in a way that you want to feel, satisfaction, pleasure, something, well then that's a motivator for the indecency and the unclean stuff. That's the greediness. Does that make sense? All right, good. Craig.
And then to kind of add on to that, I guess, with the lashon hara, it never really starts off as like a bad conversation or an evil conversation. Usually, I think like Korach, there was a good deal of maybe praise, of, hey, you're doing so good at this, or then, did you hear about this? Or there's, we got to be on guard for that. I don't know if it's a fakeness, but it's really, again, I think it's what we want. We want that somebody to praise us, somebody to tell us how good we are doing at something. I think Korach did that as well. I think that was part of what made what he did so dangerous, and why there was so many people on his side, is that he was able to provide that to people. There's what they had wanted. It's like food. It's like a junk food feeling. It feels good when people are hurt, and somehow we think it's doing something that it's not. Like food that we eat that we know isn't feeding us, but somehow it's...
Careful now, I ate a lot of that on the boat.
No, it's doing something that is fulfilling a feeling that we need filled, and really it's doing
Absolutely.
The ultimate, like, it could be like the ultimate human struggle. Why do people smoke with an oxygen mask on? That type of thing, and why it's such a hard thing to really to be against, and
Okay,
It's
appreciate
really-
that. No, that's good. And look, and I want to just bring up, because you brought up the lashon hara thing, think about where the greediness comes in. When you're speaking lashon hara, what is lashon hara? You're trying to make someone look bad in public in some way. You're sharing information that will shame them or embarrass them, or that they didn't want shared in public. So why would you do it? Well, you do it because either A, you're going to feel better if people agree with how you feel. So you're recruiting, companions to feel that way about the person. So you're recruiting others to feel whatever you're feeling. That's a greedy gain. Oh, some of you are thinking, I'm just warning people about them. No, you're not. If you really were warning somebody, you really thought there was a real thing, you would have approached them or approached leadership and maybe actually got something done about it. No, you're gossiping because you want to cause them suffering and pain in some way because for whatever perceived hurt you got. Which is really funny is that most of the time, the lashon hara is being done by people that were not directly involved. That's the insane part. I had one person in this building, doesn't come anymore, that I could not get to let go of a lashon hara situation. I was like, the thing you're upset about didn't happen to you. Why is it so upsetting to you? It happened to this other person. And after all, it got fixed and everything was fine. But that's not even the point. It was a greediness of, I want my feeling validated. And I want that person to suffer because the person who was done to wasn't suffering as much as this person. Okay, that's where the greediness comes in. Okay, so I'm going to just give you an example how lashon hara is all out of greediness. You're wanting to feel a certain way, and so you're doing what you're doing to get that feeling. Justification for validation for the feeling, or the way you're looking at somebody, or wanting companions to feel that way. So if you come to me and talk about somebody and you're trying to recruit me to look at them a certain way, I will stop you dead in your tracks. Okay? I'm not going to let you do that. Okay? If you want to talk to me about a problem you're having with someone, yes, tell me who it is and tell me what your problem is and I can try to help you fix it. But don't try to color it with getting me to see them a certain way. Just tell me what you believe happened and then allow me to get involved in trying to fix the problem. But when you try to get me to look at them in some particular negative way, that's not appropriate. I understand that you look at them that way because you're the one who got the offense. Of course, you need to let that go. Hopefully that understands, but it's all about greedy gain there, right? There's some greediness in there. Because now it became about you. Once it becomes about you, there's a greediness. Okay, Heather.
I'm guessing this is right along the lines, because I had a question about verse 28, where it says, let him who stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, so that he has something to share with those in need. And I was like, what does stealing really have to do with it? But I would guess it's on the same lines. Your greediness, you're looking at what you can gain from Messiah or from the people in the body, rather than doing the labor to gain the merit and then being able to give out from there.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably part of it. I went through that very fast, but in the context, he said, be wrath, but do not sin. All right, so things are going to come up and happen and get you upset. He says, but don't get upset. He says, don't sin. In other words, don't then take it the next step, giving place to the adversary, the devil. He says, so let him who stole, in other words, you took something that didn't belong to you. It could have been honor and respect. It could have been credit for something. It could have been anything. He says, in other words, but go out there and do the work yourself. This is not just about, the physical metaphor is the obvious pashat is, I don't have anything, so I'm going to go take yours. Instead of going out and earning it, I'm just going to come and take what you have. But that can be applied to any area of, I don't have, so I'm going to go ahead and take it instead of earning it. And so this is all about walking worthily. And so he says, don't take things that you should earn. Earn them. Okay, is that good? All right. Thank you, Heather. Okay. Gerardo.
Work kind of question. You work there, you get your pay. But it's like what you hired me for doesn't necessarily line up. And after a while, you say something, hey, this don't line up. You start getting more like of a servant role when your role should be more of a lead. And it's not heard until I growl or, speak up and say something, but it's not normally hey, how you doing? It's more like, hey, what's going on? Oh, you taken back. So when it comes to meekness and greediness, can you help me identify that and define that a little bit better? And at the same time, why does it seem that I'm only heard, I guess, in a sense, when there is a growl, and is that showing meekness or is that greediness? And also, if you can identify as to, because, I don't know, it seems like it's a little bit softer. It's like before, you used to maybe fight and throw a punch, and now it's more argumentative. It's like, okay, I'm going to tell on somebody. So.
All right. Okay, so we don't want to throw punches. We certainly don't want to do that, but we also don't want to argue either. Okay, so here, let's just take the work thing. This is for all of you. You're not going to like this, maybe. If you are a hireling and you're being paid a wage, you're being paid not for what you do necessarily, but for your time. And that employer owns you for 8 hours a day or whatever it is at so many dollars per hour. And if they want to ask you to do something that's not part of your job description, they can. Now, you don't have to like that. Then you can have a conversation, which is what Gerardo's asking, where I would go to somebody and say, Mr. Employer, Mrs. Employer, I'm a little confused. I just want to get clarification. When you hired me, I was under the impression that this was what you were going to have me do. I have not been doing that, which is fine because you're the boss and I work for you, etc. But it may not work for me and I may want to go get a different job because this is not what I wanted to be doing. Okay, so it's not that you get to complain about doing it because they own you. That's part of being an employee. You want to be the owner, then you have to be an entrepreneur and start your own thing. But if they own you, okay, I don't care what kind of professional you are, they pay you by the hour. They own you for the hour. They're paying, if you're getting paid by the hours because they own your time, okay? And so you can't sit there and go, well, my wife was a hygienist, and if every now and then they didn't have any patience for her, they would ask her maybe to clean something or go, take the trash out of the bathroom. She's like, I'm a hygienist. I'm not the clean. No, you're getting paid $25 an hour to do whatever I want you to do. Now, she didn't have to stay at a place that would do that, but that's a conversation without getting angry that you can say, well, my understanding was that this is what I do and not this. If you're going to want me to do that, you have the right to do that, but I may not want to stay, okay? And then you're saying that with meekness, right, strength and quietness without going, I'm going to punch or I'm going to fight or I'm going to argue, so you don't have to growl. You can say, can I have a conversation? I'm a little confused. Okay, just let's have a conversation. When you hired me, my understanding was this, and what I'm doing now doesn't match, and I'm confused, okay? And then let them clarify, and if you like what they say, good. If you don't, you could always get another job, all right? Some people don't realize, because they get frustrated with the idea, getting a job and changing jobs is not actually all that tough to do, okay? I know a lot of people think it is. That's because you tend to limit your options too much. But there's tons of work to be had. And if you want to do something different, you could always take time while you're doing the thing you're not loving so much to train for the thing that you'd rather do. There's lots of options of things to do. You have a lot more time than you think you have to do all these things, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, all right? So, I love listening to like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he talks about how he worked a construction job during the day, then he went to the gym so many hours before the job and after the job, and then he also went to acting classes at night. So for 18 of his 24 hours, he was doing something productive. And then he slept for 6 hours and started it all over again. If you want, you make the time and you get it worked out. But just realize all of you are slaves to the owner when you're selling your time. And they literally could ask you to do almost anything because after all, you work for them for that hour. And if they're going to pay you, look, if you're getting paid decent money, let's say you're getting $20 an hour, $25 an hour, whatever, and they want you to do something that really a $12 an hour person can do, good, well, so what? They're still paying you $25 an hour. What do you care? Well, it's beneath me and I'm insulted. And come on. Really? You're getting paid for your time. What do you care what they have you doing? Oh, but I do. Well, good, then go work somewhere else. Don't get mad at them. They just happen to realize they own you. So they're going to ask you to do whatever they have available. That if you're not doing anything else, they don't want to pay you to stand around. Hey, I need this done. Well, that's not my job. Well, it is now. It is for the next 30 minutes. Go do this thing I want you to do. Well, I don't like that. Well, then go work somewhere else. I mean, it's not that complicated. All right, Brandy.
Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to look into the things that people are saying now and bringing it back to us so that we know. When I was in Texas, our church came to our house and said, what if we had a Saturday service for you? Would you stay? And had I not already started watching your teachings, I probably would have been like, oh, that's convenient. And I know they weren't going to do all of that for me. So somebody else was asking about Shabbat there, if they were willing to do that. But thank you for taking the time. I could not watch other people who don't follow Torah, and it would make me nauseous. So thank you.
I understand. And by the way, because if you have no idea how many hours I spend a week watching other teachers so I can tell you and know what's going on. I need to know I call it checking the pulse. I'm always checking the pulse on everybody else that's out there that I think you might run into so that I can know. Now, I'm hoping that some of them might be okay and good. The ones I already know are problematic, I'm waiting for them to out themselves, like this one. You know, where they just go ahead, and it wasn't like a little slip in the middle of a service, because I've heard plenty of those. This was one they actually published, and that was the whole point of it. I watch these things so you don't have to, but then you can go back and when I reference it, you go look it up for yourself. But I feel it's part of my watchman's role, especially when you have a bunch of people that you know that are now going to places like that, and that you need to understand what's going on over there. And this, I want you to go watch it for yourself. It's 7 minutes long. Just go look it up and watch it for yourself. Okay, I know I didn't mention who it is, but you know, so then you don't have to worry about it. You'll figure it out. All right, Brandy.
My question is, when it came to, I'm watching, just so happened to be in the set apart that you did previously, and it's about the same time where it talks about, on the page where chapter 3 is at the top, where it talks about the many something wisdoms of Elohim.
Right.
And then comparing that to the one where he talks about us being one, and you have the fivefold. I would assume that the fivefold's going to walk in agreement, right? Larger picture. You obviously, as the head, are going to walk in agreement with the Father. And then below that, once you get your other four, are going to walk in agreement. And then the congregation, we're going to walk in agreement. And then it trickles down to the home, which is going to walk in agreement. But when it talks about speaking truth to each other, and it talks about the one I mentioned before from, I think, 3, you were talking about it's going to look different for different people, if you remember that?
I don't.
Okay. The way I perceived it, it might not have been how you meant to say it, but it sounded like you have the basics in Torah, but it's gonna look different.
Yeah, I'd have to have the context of what the question was back then or what I was teaching. It's 2 weeks ago, and that's in my life as an ADD. That's a long time. That's like prehistoric dinosaur time, 2 weeks, you know.
So just even the way, if you, not the people who are not walking in Torah, they're teaching completely against it, but if you did find that person and maybe they worshiped different or did certain things that maybe were traditional, and the things that I'm looking that causes division among us, which isn't usually Torah based, it's something else.
All right, look. Absolutely, there are things that Scripture does not give us specific instruction about that you could choose to do or not do. A lot of them are what we call traditions, and those are fine, as long as those traditions don't do the 2 things that are bad, which is 1, get in the way of Torah observance or in some way eliminate some sort of Torah, so they're a Torah problem, or 2, you treat it as if it's equal to Torah, like as if Yahweh said it when he didn't say it. Okay? But as long as it doesn't do either of those 2 things, a lot of traditions are very good, and people should maintain. Paul tells his people that he's working with, maintain the traditions I taught you. So he taught them some traditions. Now, so that being said, yes, there are going to be places that are going to have a more of a flavor using certain traditions that are going to maybe be more Jewish feeling or more this feeling, more that feeling, as long as it's within the framework of Torah correctness, okay, whatever that applies, depending on what it is people are doing. And so, how that's going to feel in each congregation, how that's going to work out is going to be different. And every teacher is going to teach things with a slightly different flavor. It's a matter, the important thing is the information the same, Are the positional understandings the same? Okay, so if you find teachers, it's amazing. If you took all the teachers and lined them up, you'd find that they don't line up on a tremendous amount of things positionally. Okay? And so it's that stuff that matters, not so much the metaphors and idiomatic phrases and other ways and flavors that they use to teach the stuff.
So as long as the foundation stays based in Torah, right?
Right.
So if some of the things, like one of the examples I just thought of was the people who say, well, I'm not going there because they're okay with the Star of David, which has nothing to do with Torah, versus the tzitzit, right?
Right.
So those little things that cause the divisions that shouldn't, right? It's just the Torah, because you're going to come together, but it's okay then that everybody has their own little flavor even within where we are.
Okay, well, see, the problem is you still need counsel from the point of view that when somebody's making an issue with something that doesn't seem like it's a Torah thing, it may be a Torah thing, at least to them. Star of David, Torah thing to some people, because they will think of its origin as being a pagan origin. Now, I don't think that's the case, okay? I've done a lot of study on this subject, and it's the chicken or the egg type of thing. Yes, the pagans do use a six-sided star, usually configured in a different, when you see the way it's positioned positioned differently. But David, in my opinion, had it first, okay? And then, of course, Hasatan decided to taint it and use it in his ways. You can argue that all you want. So I generally don't use them just because I don't like to argue, okay? It's a waste of time. Paul tells us that in Timothy. He says, arguing about this kind of stuff is futile and waste of time. So there's no point. So I avoid the argument because it's not a requirement to do. If it's not a requirement to do, I'd just rather not do it. Okay, so, but if you're doing it and someone sees it, I remember the first time I had a website, this was many years ago, okay? And I was selling shofars at the time, and I put pictures of the shofars, literally the picture of that horn that you could buy, that specific horn, you could see what it looked like and everything. And because I had a whole bunch of them on a page, I put a thin line of Stars of David across, like as a little divider. So I just kind of put a little string of them, like a dividing thing, so you could see one and know where the next one starts, and for the flow of it. And within minutes, I had people having a meltdown. So we took it off. And people were like, oh, why would you give in to, because why fight over? There's enough things that these people don't get as it is that I need to get their head around. I don't need to fight over things that are foolishness. Okay, it's foolish to fight over something that's not necessary. I will take a strong stand about things that Torah says to do or not do. I'm not going to fight with you over things that we have a different opinion on, okay? And so I just took it off just to make it simpler, okay? Excuse me, we had a lady come to our Sukkot. This is also a long time ago, about 10 years ago, 10 years ago. And when we put the sukkah up, Rebbitzin brings a bunch of stuff for the children to hang, plastic fruit and other things, just stuff to make it look decorated like a sukkah. Some stuff they made in their crafts, and somebody brought some Stars of David to hang up. And this lady had an utter breakdown over this and came and got in my face over it. Okay? And then I told her, I'm sorry, you're wrong and we're not doing this. You're making an issue. I don't think it's a problem, and I'm not taking them down at that point just because you're having a meltdown in my face. And her husband, who wasn't with her, called me after the feast, infuriated about the way I treated his wife. I said, your wife? You mean the one who came up and got in my face and yelled at me and told me how wrong I was? I treated her badly. I said, you may need to talk to your wife. You're getting all upset. I said, she came to my event and came in and got in my face to correct me. And this is in front of everybody. Not like we were like on the microphones. Just a lot of people standing around. And I was very meek. I was strong and gentle. And he was just like, but she was there without a covering, and she should have kept her mouth shut. Sorry. Okay. You sent her there without you, then she shouldn't have gotten herself in the face of the leadership. I didn't go up to her. She came up to me. But then after that, we stopped doing that at a lot of the feasts because I don't want to create an issue for somebody if I don't have to. Of course, I wasn't about to back down on an issue just because she was going to get in my face. I said, I'm sorry you don't agree with this, but I think it's okay, and we're leaving it. Okay? Because I wasn't going to enable the bad behavior. So my choice to not do it in the future was because I wanted to avoid the problem, but I wasn't going to give in and allow that to be a victory for trying to force ministries and leadership to do what you want, okay? I had somebody today just come up and wanted to make an issue about the calendar. I said, no, we're not doing that, okay? You already know this. I already had conversations about that with. I said, no. I said, let's go on to something else because we're not doing that. Okay, if you understood the vertical, I mean, seriously, if you understood the vertical, you would never do the things that you do to your leadership. You know, I was watching a court proceeding. It was probably part of a television show. It wasn't even a real court proceeding. And when the judge walked in the room, everybody had to stand up out of respect for the authority of the judge. Do you stand up when the authority walks in the room? Okay? Some of the older ones do. Rabbi Tom's like, I always do. And he's in a wheelchair most of the time, so to speak. He's in a scooter, but he'll stand up. I'm not saying that I require any of that stuff. It's just we've lost that understanding of how to respect authority. So we think we could just walk up to the leader of something and just get in their face and tell them how wrong they are and everything else. And that's completely disrespectful. It also is incredibly prideful to think that you know better than that teacher. Now, of course, if the teacher's only been doing this 5 minutes longer than you, I don't know. But I'm just saying but there's a pride in there. And I look at people like, what makes you think that you're qualified, and this isn't pride on my part, to come up and stand in my face and tell me how wrong I am? You don't know how much I've already studied what it is you're arguing with me about or want to argue about. You don't know my qualifications in that area. And I can promise you, I've probably studied whatever you want to get in my face about many more hours than you ever did. I've been doing this longer. I got thousands of hours on the calendar logged, okay? And I've heard every argument there is. And so we need to keep these things correctly in mind because we do not show proper respect and honor. And let me tell you, if you try to say something when you're not supposed to in a court, that judge will shut you down so fast and lock you down in contempt of court and whatever that your head would spin. Oh, but you're not afraid to come up to a leader in the ministry. You have no awe and respect properly that's due that person's position. But there are other people in your life that you would never talk like that to because you respect their authority and their position. Why is that? Why does leadership, you know what? I think because leadership over the centuries earned that. And so you're just acting upon the poor leadership that's been there before. That doesn't justify the behavior. I'm up here, and trust me and believe me, I have earned with my efforts and work every bit of respect you could ever give. I'm not saying that in any pride. You go, I kill myself for you. That deserves a lot of respect. They don't have to like and agree with everything I say, but I certainly should be treated with respect. So should Elder Billy, who, when I'm not here and even when I am here, he kills himself to make sure. And when he leaves when I don't leave sometimes. I still call him and make him work if I have a question or something. And he picks up his phone if I call, whatever time of day it is. Even when he's on vacation or even when I'm on vacation. I worked on the boat, by the way. I spent a good part of Tuesday or whatever day it was on the phone with Elder, dealing with stuff and working, even on vacation. Because the job doesn't ever end, and that deserves respect, okay? And so that's, I think, a huge part of all this, all right? I don't know how we ended up there, but okay. Brandy.
It was verse 5.
Okay.
That's the one I was trying to compare it to. Sorry, I didn't have my Bible on me.
It was verse 5 in chapter 3?
No, 4, 5.
4, 5.
As far as being one in everything, thrown
Right.
together with what I was talking about, oneness, one, just all of us, one, alike, similar.
Which is why I've told you, you need one teacher. That doesn't mean you can't listen to teachings by other teachers, okay? But one should be your teacher. That way you have one to always run things by and say, I watched this, I watched that, I was a little confused, and let the teacher, who's your teacher, tell you what the right position is if you found an actual anointed teacher. Not just the one that, some of you go to a local congregation who are watching right now, and it's just the only congregation in town, and your teachers, whatever they are, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. That doesn't mean they need to be listened to just as being right on everything, but they still need to be treated with respect. But they're your default teacher. You need to find this one, the one that's in chapter 4, verse 11. That teacher you need to find no matter where they live on the planet. That needs to then be your teacher who you ask the halakhic questions to, the walk. This is going to clear up all your confusion, answer your questions, and give you some stability so you're not borne about all over the place by the wind. Okay? So I didn't say anything to disrespect your local teacher. I mean, some of you know that it is what it is. It's the only thing you have. It's the only game in town, so to speak. But always give that person respect, because if they didn't have that thing, you wouldn't have anything to go to. And they're doing the best they can, or whatever effort they're putting into, so you give them respect. Okay? Look, I respect that the person I was talking about earlier is doing the best he can with what he understands and what he's trying to achieve. I just think it's wrong. And so I have to let you know and warn you about that. And by the way, when you're a public figure and you put things out in public, you open yourself up to that. Believe me, I get tons of it. Actually, within seconds of me saying something dumb from the mic, email is showing up in elders' email. During services, because he sees the timestamp. All I have to do is say one thing that offends some group of people that have some sort of issue, some sort of thing, and boom, it's all right there. So but I am open to that, right? Because I've opened myself up by saying things in public. So it is what it is, right? All right, it is now 5:30, and we never even got to the live stream. Live stream, let's see if we can get a couple in real quick, because I went late and I'm giving long answers.
Sarah Groover, Ephesians 4:2, in regard to the bearing with one another, is this referring to empathy? What is the difference of empathy versus sympathy versus compassion?
Okay, it probably has a lot of that in there. I think a lot of it also has to do with tolerance. Okay, we have to bear with one another, have a lot of tolerance. Okay, so that's where the long suffering comes in, so to speak. Patient tolerance, okay? Because you're going to be suffering. It's the long suffering has the word suffering in it. But you have to have tolerance, bearing with one another. In love. It also helps to be empathetic, to be able to feel and see things through their side of it, to have empathy for it. And sympathy means that you actually, feel for them. Empathy means you feel what they feel. You can understand what they're feeling. Sympathy means that you have a feeling for them that goes towards them. All right? So you're upset. If I have empathy, I can understand why you're upset. If I have sympathy, I can care about you being upset and maybe want to try to help to fix that. You see the difference? But if I have empathy and not sympathy, all I'm doing is understanding why you feel the way you do. Because it takes empathy to feel your feelings. All right? Some of you, though, have a problem with empathy on the other side of it, which is that you start to then feel exactly like the other person. You actually end up owning their feelings. They're angry, you get angry. They're happy, you're happy. They're upset, you're upset. Okay, that's an out of balance empathy, okay? You come to me upset, and I can actually understand where you're coming from, feel your pain, so to speak, without actually feeling it personally and getting upset also. That's empathy. If I have sympathy, I'm going to try to do something to help you with your situation. Of course, I would do it anyway because that's a role and a job. But I'm saying, but if I was just a friend and you came and talked to me out of sympathy, I would try to do something, okay, to make you feel better, to fix your problem. All right. So the bearing with one another in love encompasses all of that. But I think tolerance is what I was kind of going for when I was talking about it. The idea that to bear with one another means it's going to be tough to tolerate, to long suffer through those things. Look, I got to tell you, all of us, we're hard to deal with. I know I'm hard to deal with. You should know you're hard to deal with. Even you super quiet, invisible ones, you're hard to deal with because you're so super quiet and invisible that we're hard to get you out of that shell to get you to do anything. Okay, so it doesn't mean just the ones that are loud are hard to deal with. All of you have aspects of your personalities that are tough and challenging to people to deal with. So it takes a lot of patience and long suffering to deal with those that are hard to deal with. After all, they're doing that with you. It's like I tell husbands and wives, hey, listen, whatever you're thinking is so tough about the other one, they're dealing with you. Oh, well, I'm a peach to deal with. Yeah, exactly. Rob?
Okay, we had a couple questions on the fivefold thing. Jeff and Tony Lumen, what does an emissary look like this day and age?
All right, so it would be the model. It's the model you see the Chabad used, okay, the Chabad Orthodox. In other words, they would train up people and send them out to a town, and they would then open up a place of meeting in that town. So today, within m.t.o.i, it would be like when I went to Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, and I went around to meet with people and see if we might start. I did that in Urbana, Ohio, when I went to Ohio, and actually 3 congregations came out of it originally. Went up there, had a meeting as a sent one, saw if there was any interest in starting some congregations, started 3, one ended up surviving out of all of that, and it's still with us, the Urbana congregation, great congregation. But that's what it would look like today. Perhaps at some point, but after a full week by himself, I'm sure Elder doesn't want this happening anytime soon. At some point, I may get myself a little tour bus and get out there and travel around to places where we have groups of people and see what we could do to establish congregations more local to where all of you people are. And that doesn't just mean in the U.S. I might get on a plane. I got to go. I've got opportunities to go to the UK. I've got opportunities to go to South Africa. I got places in New Zealand and Australia that all need some help putting congregations together. And so certainly we can go to all those places and more at some point. Of course, that would require either a trained person to go do it, or I'd have to do it and leave trained people back here, okay? But that's the role, is someone trained. Now remember, the Great Commission of Matthew 28 was for those trained shaliachs, the shluchim, okay? They were trained apostles. They were trained to go out and establish. Look for the whomsoever wills. They go in a town, nobody was interested, rub the dust off yourself and go to the next town. They were looking for those that were looking. Now today it's a little easier. We get a lot of people online, they find us and they say, hey, is there a congregation near us? And say, no, we make note. Hey, by the way, we just realized there's like 30 of you not too far from each other in this state or that state. That's how the South Africa thing started. One of our people who was in Canada at the time, but was from South Africa originally, noticed some people in the chat were from South Africa, and then started figuring out, I wonder how many there are. Next thing we found out there was hundreds of them. Now, we don't have hundreds in our congregations there right now, but when I went, each meeting had anywhere between 75 and 100 people, and I was in 4, 5, 6 locations. I was in Johannesburg, Pretoria, Newcastle, Richards Bay, Durban, and Cape Town. Oh, I remember them all. Okay? And we had meetings in all these places. Actually, the Johannesburg, Pretoria one, we had one meeting. Okay? So, and out of those, we have a group that actually formed, and we have some viable people, especially in Cape Town. That's a good, solid group. Okay? And our actually regional representative there, Bernard, is in Cape Town, and he's fantastic. Okay, so everything's really just only shout outs to you guys. I know you're watching. So, well, actually probably not at this point. It's probably almost midnight there, being 6 hours ahead. But you guys understand that this is what the shaliach thing is, the apostle thing is. That's a good question. Okay, Rob?
Okay, I'll just go down to the next one. Evangeline Agalasso, chapter 4, verse 26. How can you wrath but do not sin? Can you please expound?
Okay, so what is anger? Okay, anger is an initial response to a stimuli of some sort, right? Something happened. Then action will come. So you can't control getting wroth, so to speak, okay? You're going to get angry from time to time. How long you stay angry and what you do about it, that's where the sin can come. Things are going to upset you. That could last a moment or all day or a month or longer. I know some people that are just angry all the time. And so the sin is not just getting angry. The sin is what you do with that, how you respond to the initial stimulus that made you upset. Okay? And that's why he talks about not to go to bed on your anger. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. In other words, release it quickly. All right? Anything else?
Rabbi J.T. Moses is asking, can you expound more on what an evangelist is according to Scripture as opposed to what the mainstream churches teach?
Yeah, my best understanding of evangelists is they are the promoters. So, in other words, if a shaliach shows up in your town and there's an evangelist in that town, the evangelist is going to get everybody excited to come hear the shaliach speak. So it's the opposite of what the church has. The church has a big meeting to come hear the evangelist speak. No, it's the people trying to get you to show up to the tent that are the evangelists. Okay? The evangelists are the ones that are out there excited about the message. You guys that take the teachings and repost them all over Facebook and everywhere and are always recommending m.t.o.i. I mean, Rick Berry is a great evangelist. I mean, most of you guys know him, okay? I got tons of people that show up and say their first contact or main contact was Rick, because Rick is out there excited about what we're doing and telling people about it. That's the evangelist. Okay, you can't help yourself. You're excited about what's going on and you want people to know about it. And so that's what that role is. And the body needs that role. How else does the word get out? Now, YouTube actually works like an evangelist. It puts me on the sidebar on people's screens when they're watching something else. So it's sort of functioning like an evangelist. It's getting that information out there to get people to check something out. Come hear something. So the people, look, when Yeshua was speaking on the mountain, and it was crowds that he had, how many thousands, right? And he had to get the fishes and loaves and all that stuff. Those people just didn't randomly show up. There were others saying, hey, you got to come and hear this guy. Those are your evangelists who ran around saying, this guy, you got to come hear him. And everybody showed up. Okay, hopefully that answered that question. Anything else?
To Judy B says, how can I evangelize to Christians about my walk when I'm so busy trying to separate myself from them or from it?
Okay, so we don't evangelize to anybody. Okay, evangelizing is when you find an opportunity that someone is interested in something and you know where to point them. Okay, you're talking about proselytizing. We don't proselytize. Okay, because they're not interested in an audience. Okay, you happen to be talking to somebody and you see that they're interested and asking questions, and say, hey, there's a great teaching you can listen to about that. Or, hey, I think you might really enjoy listening to my teacher. This is what he has to say, or whatever. That's the evangelizing that we do. We don't go out there and proselytize, which is trying to force this on people. Remember, when the apostles went to a town and nobody was interested, they just left and went to another town. They were not just standing up there trying to preach at people. All right? Which is why when you're in a conversation and somebody asks you a question, they may not be interested. They may just be asking a question, curious instead of interested. Recommend a teaching. If they actually really want an answer, tell them the best answer I can give you is this teaching. Don't answer the question yourself. Keep you out of trouble that way too. And some of you are looking at me funny. I don't answer questions if I can point them to a teaching. Okay, and I know the answers. But I'd rather them listen to the teaching. Plus, it's going to see how serious they are. So when people call me up and they have a question there's a teaching for, I tell them, I'd like you to go listen to this teaching, and if you still have a question, call me back. Ask Elder. I do that all day long. The teachings are designed to be the best delivery method for the information. Okay? So better than just answering a question. I don't answer questions that are teachings for. I give them just enough to tell them why they should listen to the teaching and what they'll find in it, but they should go listen to the teaching. Because why would I want to give you in 5 minutes what won't really answer your question, won't address all your issues that you need to listen to 4 hours to really get? And if the person really wants it, it's worth 4 hours, isn't it? If it's that's a short teaching. All right? All right, anything else? We're good. All right.